Yesterday we started with what I call a sandwich. I'm not talking about a physical sandwich. As we look at what the Apostle Paul is talking about here in 2 Corinthians, the 5th chapter, and the 6th verse, he says, we are of good courage. And then he talks about walking by faith. And now as we go on to the 8th verse, what does he say? He says, we are of good courage. You see, on the two sides of this sandwich, the two pieces of bread on this sandwich, we find these words, good courage. You see, when we realize as believers that our bodies are nothing but temporal, that there's an eternal home, that right now we are absent, we are abroad, we are not walking in the glory of God. But someday when we pass from this life into the next, we are going to be swallowed up by life itself. We are going to put on, we talked about that last week, put on this new immortality. What a wonderful, wonderful experience. And what that does, what that realization does, is it gives us courage. And again, so again, the Apostle Paul says in verse number 8, we are of good courage. Notice the tense that he's talking about. He's talking about right now, in this present, now and now. He's not talking about the future. He's talking about now. And he's saying right now in our suffering, right now in the things that are going on in our world, right now, we are of good courage. And then he says, I say. This is important because what Paul is doing is he's drawing our attention. Let me ask you a question. You ever had your father say something like this? And I said, well, what does it do to that son, daughter? It grabs their attention. And so what Paul is doing is he's saying, I say. He's grabbing the attention again of the Corinthians. I say, and prefer rather to be absent from the body and to be at home with the Lord. Is the Apostle Paul suicidal? No. What he's doing is he's saying, this is my preference. The word prefer means to think well of. It means to put one thing in front of the other. I prefer. In other words, I am ordering my life around this. And what's he ordering his life around? He says, I prefer to be absent from this body, from the body, from this tent, from this temporary dwelling place. You know, I've flown probably millions of miles. I don't know exactly. I haven't counted. I used to be a 100,000-mile-a-year flyer. There's always that time when you prefer to be home. I know many times I would land in the United States and something was wrong with the next flight. And they'd say, oh, sorry, but you need to spend the night here. I prefer to be home. And that's what the Apostle Paul is talking about. Now, when I've landed in an airport, let's say I landed in LaGuardia, and I live here in West Michigan, I didn't say, well, I'm just going to walk out. No, I would go to that motel room, but I was preferring to be home. And that's what Paul is talking about when he says, I prefer to be absent from the body and to be at home with the Lord. What's Paul saying? He's saying, this is my preference. This is the order of my life, to be home with the Lord. You know what? Just think about that. If we as believers would set that as the order of our lives, to be home with the Lord, you know what would happen here in our nasty now and now in our life here on earth? We would have a new perspective. We would look at everything as saying, I'm going home. I'm going to do everything I can do here on earth for my heavenly home in heaven. And that's what the Apostle Paul is talking about. He's saying, I'd rather be absent from the body and to be home with the Lord. He is not suicidal. He's just giving us a listing of preference. Going on into verse number 9, therefore, there's another therefore. Why is it there? Because we have this hope, because we have this courage, that this life is not the end, that we have a life waiting for us. We are waiting to be swallowed up with life. We are waiting to be clothed with the glory of God. And going back all the way back through the 5th and 4th chapters of 2 Corinthians, we have this. And because of that, therefore, we also have as our ambition. You ever ran into a Christian who didn't have any ambition? Well, maybe the reason why they don't have any ambition is because they don't realize that heaven is their home, that this is only an earthly dwelling place right now. So, therefore, we also have as our ambition, whether at home or absent. And what is our ambition? Our ambition is to be pleasing to Him. You see, when you have hope, when you realize that this world is not your home, but you're just passing through, as the song goes, when you really have that in your understanding, and by the way, the Apostle Paul uses this word knowing, and it means, the Greek word is eido, and it means to have this perception, this understanding. When we have this as our understanding, you know what? It changes us, and we have in our hearts this goal to be pleasing to Him. We have courage. And now we also have this in our hearts to be pleasing to Him, to be agreeable, to be agreeable. You ever ate a food that wasn't agreeable with you? What does it do? It causes you to be upset. Well, we need to be agreeable to the Lord. There are things that please God. And we need to set those things that please Him as the goal, as the ambition, as our loving desire, as the things that we honor the most. That word ambition it means something that we honor the most. We need to set pleasing the Lord as our ambition. That it needs to be a high goal, even the highest of goals in our lives. Will you set that as your ambition today? God bless you. Thank you for watching.